Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna. You're watching A News. Let's take a look at the top stories this hour. Trump declares the US-Iran peace deal all signed as G7 leaders battle to tie up loose ends. World leaders gather in France for a second day of talks for the G7 summit. And 8 people die after US Air Force B-52 bomber crashes in California. US President Donald Trump says Iran has agreed never to obtain a nuclear weapon, calling it a key part of a newly signed agreement between Washington and Tehran. However, many of the details remain unclear, and negotiations on a lasting settlement are still expected to continue.
US President Donald Trump says the United States and Iran have signed a preliminary agreement aimed at extending the current ceasefire and moving towards a broader settlement of the conflict. The announcement came as Trump arrived in France for the G7 summit. He said the agreement would build on the truce first reached in April and help reopen the Strait of Hormuz, a key global shipping route that has faced major disruption during the fighting. The deal is expected to extend the ceasefire for another 60 days, while negotiators work on more difficult issues, including the future of Iran's nuclear program and wider regional security concerns.
I'm very happy to say it's signed, the deal's all signed, and the strait is already partially opened. As you know, they're doing a little hunting for a couple of mines that they've already found. But it's essentially ships are starting to go out now. On Friday, it'll be completely opened.
Trump also said in a post on Truth Social that Iran had agreed never to obtain a nuclear weapon and dismissed reports that Washington was paying Tehran hundreds of millions of dollars. Vice President J.D. Vance said the document signed so far is only a short memorandum and that further details could be released before a planned signing ceremony in Geneva on Friday. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian described the memorandum as an important step towards ending the fighting, but said a permanent truce still needs to be negotiated. The agreement could eventually include sanctions relief and economic support for Iran. However, key questions remain unresolved, including the future of Iran's enriched uranium stockpile and Iran's demand that Israel halt its military operations in Lebanon.
And as far as reaction from Tehran, Iran's foreign minister says his country is preparing to negotiate the terms of a final peace agreement with Washington now that a deal has been agreed. Taraz Shiraliliu reports.
The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has said that Tehran and Washington will start negotiating the provisions of a final peace deal after the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding to end the war. He confirmed that both sides have agreed to meet in Switzerland on Friday. Araghchi added that chief negotiators, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf and US Vice President J.D. Vance are expected to sign the memorandum. According to the state IRIB news agency, Iran's top diplomat made the remarks following a meeting with members of Parliamentary Economic Affairs Committee after Iran announced that it accepted the ceasefire deal. He also stated that during a 60-day period, which could be extended, the Iranian and US sides will negotiate the terms of the peace deal to include the removal of sanctions and Tehran's civilian nuclear program. Araghchi did not mention whether the Iranian and US negotiators will meet directly. However, mediators are expected to facilitate the signing event and the talks that follow. Meantime, Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Baghai announced that prior to the signing, a number of scheduled visits in the region will take place, though he did not specify a venue. Speaking at a weekly press conference, he said Iran will not release the clauses of the memorandum before it is signed on Friday. He also said Tehran does not trust Israel or the US to carry out their obligations, considering their past record of attacking Iran in the middle of negotiations. Baghai added that Iran is demanding that the UN Security Council adopt a binding resolution to guarantee for implementation of its agreements with the United States. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
Now let's go to France, where the G7 summit is underway. The Middle East is one of the focal points. And US President Donald Trump has told reporters that the peace deal with Tehran will be signed on Friday and is very powerful. Ross Cullen reports from Evian.
Well, after the announcement that the United States and Iran have agreed a peace accord, which will be formally signed in Switzerland on Friday, all of the talk on this first day of the G7 leaders summit here in the French town of Evian was about the specifics of that deal, what has been agreed between Washington and Tehran, and the possible reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump, the US president, speaking here in Evian on Monday, saying that the Strait of Hormuz, the crucial waterway, is already partially open and will be completely open from Friday onwards. He did say there was a problem of some of the mines that need to be cleared, and on that point, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, the host leader here in Evian, also speaking on Monday after bilateral talks with his US counterpart, said that some European mine clearance ships are ready to be deployed from as soon as Tuesday to the region. The UK, Germany, Italy and France have also suggested they might be ready to lift certain sanctions from Iran in return for Tehran pursuing clear and verifiable steps on its nuclear programme. The G7 leaders of the US, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Japan and Canada also had a formal dinner on Monday where they discussed the US and Iran, but also other issues such as the war in Ukraine and technology regulation, which will be the specific focus of formal sessions over the coming days. Ross Cullen, A News in Evian.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky joined G7 leaders in France on Tuesday to discuss ending Russia's war with Ukraine. European leaders are seeking to persuade US President Donald Trump to maintain support for Kyiv and increase pressure on Moscow as peace efforts remain stalled. Zelensky is also expected to meet with Trump as efforts to reach a ceasefire remain stalled. The discussions come after a major Russian overnight attack on Ukrainian cities and amid concerns that the conflict in Iran has shifted attention away from the war. A fire has broken out at an oil depot in southern Russia after drone debris fell on the site. It happened a day after a major Russian attack damaged a historic monastery in Kyiv. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts to end the war continue, with US President Donald Trump saying he believes both sides may be open to talks.
Ukraine and Russia have exchanged fresh long-range attacks as fighting continues despite renewed diplomatic efforts to end the war. Russia's defense ministry said it destroyed 172 Ukrainian drones overnight into Tuesday across multiple regions, including around Moscow, the Black Sea, the Sea of Azov, and Russian-annexed Crimea. In southern Russia's Krasnodar region, authorities said drone debris caused a fire at an oil depot near Crimea. No casualties were reported. Meanwhile, on Monday, Russia launched a major overnight missile and drone attack on Ukraine. In Kyiv, at least 5 people were killed and dozens injured. The strikes also damaged the Kyiv-Pechersk Lavra Monastery, a UNESCO World Heritage Site founded nearly 1,000 years ago. It is seen as one of Ukraine's most important religious landmarks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited the monastery and described the attack as a blow to Ukraine's history and culture. Russia denied targeting the site and said it had been damaged by a Ukrainian air defense missile. Ukrainian security officials said debris recovered at the scene indicated a Russian drone. In Ukraine's second-largest city, Kharkiv, a strike killed 5 emergency responders who had arrived to handle an earlier attack. Ukrainian officials said the rescuers were struck while responding to a fire at what they described as a civilian packaging facility. The exchanges came as leaders gathered for the G7 summit in France. Zelensky, who is due to attend the summit, said he had recently spoken with US President Donald Trump and offered direct talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump said he believed both leaders were open to discussions on ending the war, although any breakthrough has yet to happen.
Moldova and Ukraine have officially begun accession negotiations with the European Union on Monday, marking a major milestone in their bid to join the bloc. Meeting in Luxembourg, EU member states opened the first chapter of talks focused on democratic reforms, the rule of law and fundamental rights. European leaders hailed the move as a strategic step for peace and stability, while the two countries described it as a powerful endorsement of their European aspirations, despite ongoing regional challenges. And in Strasbourg, European lawmakers are set to vote on a significant trade agreement with the United States. The decision comes as the European Parliament considers legislation linked to a wider deal intended to ease friction between the world's two biggest economies. From Arnhem, Netherlands, our correspondent has more.
Welcome to This Day in Europe, where lawmakers in Strasbourg will vote on a trade deal with the U.S. aimed at easing tariff tensions between the world's two largest economies. The European Parliament is expected to approve legislation implementing the EU side of the so-called Turnberry Agreement, reached with U.S. President Donald Trump last year at his golf resort in Scotland. The deal was designed to avert an escalating trade conflict that threatened billions of euros in transatlantic commerce. Now, under the agreement, the EU would remove tariffs on a range of American imports, including U.S.-made vehicles and industrial goods. In return, Europe accepted a framework that leaves in place broad U.S. tariffs of 15% on most European exports. Supporters say the deal brings much-needed certainty after years of tariff threats and trade disputes. European manufacturers, particularly automakers, argue stability is preferable to continued confrontation. Critics, however, say the agreement exposes Europe's weaker negotiating position and leaves key disputes unresolved. Brussels and Washington remain divided over issues including industrial subsidies, steel trade, the EU's carbon border tax, and environmental regulations. Temporary tariff suspensions linked to the long-running aircraft subsidy dispute are also due to expire in the coming weeks, raising the risk of renewed tensions. That's why lawmakers stressed during Monday's debate that the agreement includes safeguards and suspension clauses if the U.S. fails to uphold its commitments. The Socialists and Democrats group of the European Parliament made it very clear. It's a temporary agreement with clear conditions, not a blank check for Donald Trump. Today's vote is expected to pass comfortably, but whether the agreement marks a lasting reset in transatlantic trade ties or merely a temporary truce remains to be seen. For A News, I'm Anita Sharma in Arnhem, Netherlands.
New Caledonia, known to many Indigenous Kanaks as Kanaki, is preparing for crucial provincial elections on the 28th of June, amid ongoing debate over the territory's political future and relationship with France. Joining me now to unpack is Brenda Wanabo Ipeze. She's an activist with the Caledonian Union movement in Kanaki. Brenda, thanks for your time. Can you hear me okay, Brenda?
Okay.
Welcome to the program once again. Now, how important is the election scheduled to take place on the 28th of June, Brenda? And why has it been delayed since 2024? What factors have contributed to the most recent postponement, and what are your expectations for this vote?
I think that when we talk about Kanaki, I want to emphasize here that we are talking about 173 years of French colonization. Since 2024, the French colonial state and the pro-loyalists in our country have been seeking to expand the electorate. This electorate is the line that must not be crossed, for it's what guarantees the country's stability, but it also guarantees our fundamental right, the right to self-determination. Expanding the electorate is an illusion designed to keep in power in the South province those who want a French New Caledonia. the FLNKS has been calling for several years for this election to take place on June 28th. So this is a crucial deadline for us. For this also means putting an end to 40 years of governance marked by discriminatory practices, the Kanak and Oceanian population practices that have intensified since the event means changing and renewal officials.
Okay, Brenda, what do you make of the proposed concept of a state of New Caledonia within the French Republic? And why do many of your colleagues oppose both the earlier accords and this particular concept as a potential framework for the territory's future?
The plan to create is an illusion because, in my view, you cannot be free and independent if you are under the control of the French colonial state. The FLNKS opposes the Bougival-Élysée-Oudinot agreement because, in our view, it is not a continuation of the Nouméa agreement, which is a decolonization agreement. This agreement is a ruse designed to keep New Caledonia within the French Republic since its extraordinary Congress in La Conception in the town of Mondor. In August 2025, the FLNKS has decided to reject this agreement, and it is a success that our representative Emmanuel Chibao was able to block this agreement in the National Assembly as the representatives vote unanimously in favor of the motion to reject this so-called agreement. Today, this agreement is no longer being discussed, but we are waiting for the provincial elections to conclude so that we can determine whether to proceed with future political discussion or not, but this discussion must lead us toward the path of full sovereignty for the country with everyone on board.
Now, Brenda, you've spoken about the importance of Kanak agency. Do you believe Kanak voices are being effectively represented in current discussions about the territory's future? You weren't able to hear my question? Brenda?
Yeah.
Would you like me to repeat my question? I'll repeat my last question, Brenda. So you've spoken about the importance of this Kanak agency. Do you believe Kanak voices are being effectively represented?
Yes.
They are?
It's very important for the Kanak people to vote because there are a lot of discrimination in our country.
Our connection doesn't seem to be very good there. Brenda, thank you very much for joining us on the program. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and all the best for the voting there. Now, we'll continue with the main stories of the day after a short break. Stay with us.
We are in Seoul, the Republic of Korea, a country that for more than 70 years has lived in a shadow of unfinished war.
Network north of the 13th parallel. I was 18 years old when the Korean War broke out. My two brothers were dragged out to the front yard of the village public hall and forcibly subjected to a trial under the name of People's Trial.
The military demarcation line, created after the Korean War, became a massive wall, preventing separated families from meeting.
Less than a kilometer away lies North Korea.
지금 우리 무장력은 그 어떤 위기에도 대응할 철저한 준비가 되어 있으며
Подписанный сегодня договор предусматривает в том числе оказание взаимной помощи в случае агрессии против одного из участников.
Russian-Ukraine war now is connected with North Korean participation in Russian army.
The complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula is the only outcome that we will find acceptable.
If the U.S. persists in such hostile policy towards the DPRK, there will never be denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back to A News. A US Air Force B-52 bomber crashed shortly after takeoff in California, killing all 8 people on board. An investigation is underway, but officials say it could be months before the cause is known. Here's more.
A US Air Force B-52 Stratofortress bomber crashed Monday shortly after takeoff from Edwards Air Force Base in California's Mojave Desert, killing all 8 people on board. The crew included a mix of military personnel, government civilians and defence contractors. The 8-engine bomber was conducting a routine test flight in support of a radar modernisation program when it went down moments after departure, bursting into flames and sending a massive plume of black smoke into the sky. Speaking at a news briefing, Colonel James Hayes, Deputy Commander of the 412th Test Wing, said first responders moved quickly to secure the crash site and begin firefighting efforts.
It was a B-52 that was on initial takeoff, supporting the radar modernization program, which is it was a local test sortie. It took off and immediately after takeoff crashed and burst into flames. Our team of first responders snapped into action and immediately cordoned off the area and took the appropriate action to start putting out the flames. While that was taking place, our base responded in kind to establish an emergency operations center and a wing operations center to ensure that the command and control of all base agencies and the response for the recovery effort was underway.
Hayes said a formal military investigation is now underway, but findings are not expected to be released publicly for approximately 6 months. The B-52 Stratofortress is one of the oldest aircraft still in service with the US Air Force, having entered service in 1955. Designed as a long-range heavy bomber, it can carry up to 70,000 pounds of conventional and nuclear munitions. The aircraft has played a key role in numerous military operations over the decades and remains a central component of America's strategic bomber fleet.
Turning to Gaza, where at least 4 Palestinians were killed in Israeli strikes on Monday. One woman was killed in the town of Zawaida, another person in a refugee camp, and 2 people, a medic and his son, died in a strike on a Gaza City rooftop. The Israeli military reported it killed 2 Hamas militants in separate attacks, citing planned operations against Israeli troops. Meanwhile, mediators have prepared for further ceasefire talks in Cairo to advance a US brokered peace plan. And in other news from the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his country will not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. His comments came after the deal was signed between the US and Iran. Here's more.
For decades, I have been fighting Iran's efforts to acquire nuclear weapons. I can define this as my life's mission. I have upheld it until now, and I will uphold it in the future as well. With or without a deal, Iran will not have nuclear weapons, not today and not tomorrow. As long as I am Prime Minister of Israel, this will not happen.
The United Nations Security Council has unanimously voted to extend its mission in Afghanistan for another year until the 17th of June 2027. The extension means the UN will continue to support its humanitarian, human rights and political role in the country. The decision comes as Afghanistan faces a deepening humanitarian crisis and continuing international concern over restrictions on women and girls. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis has the details from Kabul.
The United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan, known as UNAMA, will now remain in place for another year. All 15 members of the Security Council supported the resolution drafted by China during a meeting in New York on Monday. The extension allows UNAMA to continue coordinating humanitarian aid, monitoring human rights, engaging with the authorities here in Kabul, and reporting developments to the Security Council. The Council has also requested a strategic review of the mission. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is expected to present its findings by the end of March next year. The United States welcomed the planned review, but said the mission must become more streamlined and effective. Washington also called on the Taliban to fulfill counter-terrorism commitments, respect human rights, and release detained Americans. China's ambassador to the UN, Fu Song, said UNAMA continued to play an important role in coordinating international assistance and facilitating a dialogue. However, he warned that restrictions that prevent Afghan women who work for the UN from entering UN premises seriously affects the work of UN agencies. The Taliban has not yet publicly responded to the latest decision. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Azerbaijan has been elected to the UN Human Rights Committee for the 2027 to 2030 term. The vote took place in New York during the 42nd meeting of states parties to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Azerbaijan's candidate, Fuat Zarbiev, won the election in the first round with the support of 131 states. Candidates from 16 countries competed for 9 seats on the committee, which monitors implementation of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And the 2026 FIFA World Cup is already delivering memorable moments, with early results shaping the race for a place in the knockout stages. From dominant performances by tournament favourites to surprising upsets, the competition is providing plenty of drama and talking points for fans around the world. It was a dramatic night of World Cup action across Groups E and F. Germany completely dismantled Curaçao in a stunning 7-1 thrashing, while Côte d'Ivoire edged past Ecuador with a vital 1-0 victory. Over in Group F, Sweden put on a dominant display to beat Tunisia 5-1, while the Netherlands and Japan fought out a thrilling 2-2 draw to share the points. And as match results stand, Group H, Spain, Cabo Verde 0-0. Group G, Belgium, Egypt 1-1. Group H, Saudi Arabia, Uruguay 1-1. Group G, Iran, New Zealand 2-2. Iran and New Zealand played out a 2-2 draw in their opening Group G match at the World Cup on Monday. Fans from both nations reacted to a result that leaves both teams with a point as they head into their next fixtures.
Fans in Los Angeles expressed mixed feelings as they watched Iran World Cup match against New Zealand end in draw on Monday. The match, played at Los Angeles Stadium, ended in a 2-2 draw. Los Angeles is home to the world's largest Iranian diaspora, and before kickoff, about 300 to 500 protesters gathered outside the stadium, waving anti-government signs and flags. Some Iranian Americans said attending the match would imply support for Iran's government.
I was very happy and high, very proud to be Iranian and see this amazing team with everything they've been through. They showed up like that and just brought tears of joy and pride to me. What an honor to be Iranian and witness these amazing young men that showed up under all the circumstances they were in. So honored to be here.
Proud Iranian fans also said sports should be kept separate from politics and that everyone should support the Iranian team despite the current situation.
And that's what the World Cup is all about, right? Bringing people together and sharing the moments with your fellow countrymen, and or even if you're not from the country, just to support the team. And yeah, so that that's really what it's all about.
They're going to come and play. Doesn't matter where they're going to be practicing. Doesn't matter what is the political wars going on. They are the professional players, and they live for these moments. They're going to show everybody in the world that doesn't matter what that goes around them, they are here for a reason.
New Zealand fans also showed their support, celebrating their secured a 2-2 draw in their opening World Cup match against Iran.
I had nearly had a heart attack. I thought we were going to win and then lose and then win and then lose, and we drew, which is kind of like a win for us, right? Yeah.
I think a really good opening game for Darren Bazley and the squad, but to lead twice, I think they'll be mildly upset, but equally positive with the first result.
Iran will return to Los Angeles to face Belgium, while New Zealand will take on Egypt in Vancouver in the next Group G matches on Sunday.
China's top coal-producing region says it's expanding renewable energy while continuing to tap its vast coal reserves. Officials in Inner Mongolia say the region is trying to balance energy security with rapid growth in new energy.
Coal remains central to Inner Mongolia's energy strategy, and with that in mind, the region is converting the fossil fuel into oil, gas and chemicals. It's an initiative aimed at reducing the region's reliance on imports. According to local authorities, installed new energy capacity has reached 175 million kilowatts. That accounts for 9% of the national total and surpasses thermal power capacity.
It used to be a coal city. The installed capacity of new energy in the region has already exceeded that of thermal power, so new energy is developing very rapidly. Relying on thermal power alone is not considered sustainable for Ordos in future.
Officials say renewable projects may also bring environmental benefits. One forestry official says desert photovoltaic developments could gradually reduce sandstorms that once occurred almost daily. Companies are also investing in emerging technologies. Mingyang Smart Energy says electricity generated by wind and solar power can be used to produce hydrogen through electrolysis, describing hydrogen as a clean energy source.
Families in southern Lebanon have begun returning home now that conflict involving the US and Iran has ended for now with an agreement. Thousands of people were displaced during the 3-month period.
Displaced residents in southern Lebanon have begun returning to their towns, carrying belongings and cautiously resuming daily life. For many returning families, the ceasefire brings relief and cautious optimism after months of displacement and uncertainty.
We are packing up things and we're going to our town. Thank God the ceasefire happened.
I'm filling up fuel. Then we'll put our trust in God and head to our homes. Praise be to God, Lord of the worlds. As I said, it passed safely and soundly.
Authorities have advised caution as some security measures remain in place. Lebanon experienced the deadliest spillover of the wider US-Iran conflict, with over 1 million people displaced and thousands killed. While families can now return home, rebuilding communities and restoring normalcy will take time as the region recovers.
The Ebola outbreak is also spreading in Uganda. Scientists there are racing to develop a vaccine against the Bundi-Bugyo strain of the virus. Researchers say ongoing trials could help pave the way for new treatments and vaccines in the coming months.
Ugandan scientists are stepping up efforts to develop a vaccine against the Bundi-Bugyo strain of Ebola as the outbreak continues to spread in Uganda and neighbouring Democratic Republic of the Congo. Researchers at the Uganda Virus Research Institute are working with global health organisations and pharmaceutical companies to develop an effective vaccine. According to the World Health Organization, the Bundi-Bugyo virus is one of 3 Ebola virus species known to cause major outbreaks. There are currently no approved vaccines or specific treatments for the strain. While many questions remain, ongoing clinical trials aim to provide answers.
We already have individuals who got infected with Zaire, those who got infected with the Bundi-Bugyo, those who got infected with Sudan. If you get their antibodies, can they kill the other one? Can somebody who has antibodies against Zaire, can those antibodies work against Bundi-Bugyo? Those lab studies are also being planned.
The World Health Organization says a promising vaccine trial by the International AIDS Vaccine Initiative could be available within 7 months.
There are other support we give. I already told you the emergency medical team. The emergency medical training that we started many years ago, and many Ugandans were certified. I think I heard 148. That helps in preparedness, and that helps in response.
Health authorities say most of Uganda's 19 confirmed Ebola cases were imported from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The latest outbreak there was declared in mid-May, with 689 confirmed cases and 139 deaths reported as of Friday.
And in other news from Africa, Casablanca is hosting the first Africa-based session of the China-Africa Economic and Trade Expo. The event comes weeks after Beijing implemented a zero-tariff policy for African exports. The expo is bringing together Chinese and Moroccan companies, with Rabat looking to boost exports while attracting more investment.
For the first time, the China-Africa Economic and Trade Expo is being held on African soil, putting Casablanca at the center of a new push to deepen commercial ties between Morocco and China.
Around 120 Chinese companies, along with about 60 Moroccan companies, are taking part in this major event. Hunan Province's Vice Governor is leading a delegation of nearly 100 people to Morocco. We hope that in the future, China and Morocco, especially Hunan and Morocco, will develop even stronger ties.
The expo focuses on new energy, machinery, industrial equipment, agri-food, consumer goods, and automotive parts. For Morocco, the goal is to attract investment, technology, and new export opportunities.
We feel extremely honored and heartened by the strong China-Morocco friendship reflected at this expo. Lots of Chinese firms gather here in this event to present reliable Chinese equipment and technology. Morocco opens its market warmly to Chinese brands.
Chinese companies are already expanding in Morocco's infrastructure, construction, renewable energy and automotive sectors as the country prepares for major projects linked to the 2030 FIFA World Cup.
We have been present in Morocco for almost a year and a half, and we are involved in several projects, including the Moulay Abdellah Stadium. We hope to further develop the Moroccan market and strengthen the relationship between Morocco and China.
Morocco is also looking to turn China's tariff-free access into new export gains, especially for argan oil and other high-value Moroccan products.
It is a valuable initiative that reflects cooperation between China and African countries, especially Morocco. Morocco's hosting of Chinese companies for the first edition is an important step in strengthening economic and trade relations.
China-Morocco trade reached nearly $11 billion in 2025. Now Beijing's zero-tariff policy and rising Chinese investment in EV batteries, auto parts, renewable energy and industrial zones could help Morocco boost exports and climb the industrial value chain.
Muslims in Saudi Arabia marked the Islamic New Year on Monday as a new kiswa, the black cloth covering the Kaaba, was placed over Islam's holiest site in Mecca. The covering is made from embroidered silk panels decorated with Quranic inscriptions. The Kaaba is the focal point of the annual Hajj pilgrimage, during which millions of Muslims travel to Mecca and walk around the sacred structure as part of their religious duties. Hajj is one of the 5 pillars of Islam and is required once in a lifetime for Muslims who are physically and financially able. After a break, we'll continue with the main stories shaping the region. Stay with us.
We are in Seoul, the Republic of Korea, a country that for more than 70 years has lived in the shadow of unfinished war.
I was 18 years old when the Korean War broke out. My 2 brothers were dragged out to the front yard of the village public hall and forcibly subjected to a trial under the name of People's Trial.
The military demarcation line, created after the Korean War, became a massive wall, preventing separated families from meeting.
Less than a kilometer away lies North Korea.
지금 우리 무장력은 그 어떤 위기에도 대응할 철저한 준비가 되어 있으며
Подписанный сегодня договор предусматривает в том числе оказание взаимной помощи в случае агрессии против одного из участников.
Russian-Ukraine war now is connected with North Korean participation in Russian army.
The complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula is the only outcome that we will find acceptable.
If the U.S. persists in such hostile policy towards the DPRK, there will never be denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula.
Welcome to A News, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note to fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for A News.
Welcome back. You're watching A News. Azerbaijan and the Holy See are seeking stronger ties with interreligious dialogue and cultural heritage among the main areas of cooperation. President Ilham Aliyev received George Jacob Kuvakad, prefect of the Dicastery for Interreligious Dialogue of the Holy See in Baku. They discussed bilateral ties, reciprocal visits, tolerance, multiculturalism and cooperation with the Haidar Aliyev Foundation. Kuvakad conveyed greetings from Pope Leo XIV and Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State. President Aliyev also presented him with a letter inviting Pope Leo XIV to visit Azerbaijan. Uzbekistan and 5 partner countries have signed an agreement for the further development of the Kaska Plus transport corridor. It's a strategic route linking Central Asia with the South Caucasus and Turkey, which provides an alternative trade connection between Asia and Europe.
Representatives of Uzbekistan, Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan and Kyrgyzstan have agreed on new measures to strengthen cooperation within CISA called Kaska Plus railway corridor. It was established in 2019 and connects Central Asia with the South Caucasus and Turkey, helping facilitate cargo transportation between regional and international markets. Freight traffic along the road has grown steadily in recent years, with cargo volumes transported by Uzbekistan increasing 5-fold compared to 2019. During the meeting, railway officials reviewed the corridor's performance in 2025 and the first quarter of 2026, identifying operational bottlenecks and discussing ways to improve efficiency. Particular attention was given to lowering transit times, improving logistics services, and developing a more competitive tariff policy to attract additional cargo flows. The 6 countries signed a protocol outlining further cooperation and measures to increase freight transportation volumes. Earlier initiatives within the Kaska Plus framework included proposals to introduce digital tracking systems for wagons and containers, improve coordination among railway operators, and expand refrigerated transportation services for agricultural exports. It is Sivil Rajab reporting from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, A News.
Kazakhstan is betting big on artificial intelligence. The government has signed a $10 billion agreement package with American tech companies Firebird and NVIDIA to build a major AI infrastructure hub. The project aims to turn the industrial city of Ekibastuz into a center for global data processing and AI computing. Fariza Kalimorzina has more.
Kazakhstan has signed a $10 billion agreement package with US tech companies Firebird and NVIDIA to build what could become one of Central Asia's largest AI infrastructure hubs in the industrial city of Ekibastuz. The project will be developed in northeastern Kazakhstan, a region long associated with coal mining and power generation. But the authorities now want to turn it into a global computing hub using energy produced in the region to power large-scale artificial intelligence infrastructure. The plan is to build the data center valley powered by high-performance NVIDIA-based servers. The agreements we signed following talks between Kazakh officials and representatives of NVIDIA and Firebird. Under the deal, Kazakhstan will fully finance construction and infrastructure, and Firebird will supply server equipment and help attract major global technology companies. The project will be implemented in 2 phases. The first is expected to use more than 100 megawatts of power, while total capacity is projected to reach at least 300 megawatts, with potential expansion to 1 gigawatt.
It all starts with energy. If you don't have energy, then you can't do the rest of it. That is the foundation, and that is your ceiling. You can't go past the amount of development that you would like to if you don't have more energy. Kazakhstan is blessed with energy. Because you have abundant energy and you can produce more, you are a great place to start. Actually, Kazakhstan can participate at every layer of this 5-layer cake.
Officials say the goal is to turn electricity generated in Kazakhstan's coal region into exportable digital services, from AI computing power to global data processing for international companies. And according to government estimates, the project could generate at least $3 billion in annual export revenue, create new jobs, attract global tech players, and strengthen Kazakhstan's ambitions to become one of Eurasia's leading digital hubs. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
And that's the news for this hour. Stay tuned to A News for all the latest updates.